Welcome, everyone, to Coffee, Coaching, and Callings, a live podcast created for coaches, leaders, and helping professionals that are on a mission to lead a successful and heart-centered life. Your hosts today are myself, Laurel Elders, and Michael Tucker of the Institute for Integrative Intelligence, where it's our mission to elevate human potential through the art and science of masterful, heart-driven coaching. Today's podcast will be focusing on Follow Your Calling, Part 2, with one of my favorite people, Melanie Dewberry. Melanie is a ceremonialist, poet, speaker, and author of The Power of Naming, A Journey Toward Your Soul's Indigenous Nature. Melanie worked in the coaching field as a lead trainer for CTI. Upon waking from a dream, she co-created the first and only magazine for the coaching industry called Choice, where she wrote the Soul of Coaching column for 5 years. Today, we're going to be exploring the idea of cultivating self-love while we're on this journey. Welcome.
Aw,
I'm so
thank
excited.
you. I know, so happy to be here with you guys again. Thanks for having me.
Yes, very excited to do part 2. So where do we want to begin? There's so much depth here.
Okay, so I'll start a thread and then you guys jump in. I don't need to be the one talking the whole time. I mean, love is self-love, and love is it's a huge platform. It's a huge conversation. But I think where I'll start is that in the loving of self, and you know, there's a lot of conversation about what self-love looks like, boundaries, and being aware of your consciousness, doing your own inner work. All that's true. I don't have, I do have lots of little areas we can talk about around that. But what I want people to hear is that when you are actively engaging in learning how, or in standing in your sense of self, your sense of love, your agency, your own sense of sovereignty, to use those words, you are unable to be manipulated. You are steadfast. I mean, love will root you like a cedar tree, like a redwood tree. And that's really the most important thing. And the reason why I say it's the most important thing is that Earth, is a beautiful planet, but it's also a dense planet. And we're covered, particularly in North America, United States, and probably Canada, and probably in Europe as well. We're covered in institutions and industries that would like to manage who we are, that like to tell us who we are, and what we should be thinking, where we should be putting our time and our energy, how we should be working and who we should be working for, and to hyperly focus us on money as the content of us, rather than love, rather than loving who we are and loving what we're up to, and being clear about who we are. And so we can be easily and often are managed even from the moment we go to school. And I love school. I was an avid student, but I guess it is, school is another institution. It has its limitations in that it wants to tell you how to write, how to do math, and how to be what you need to actually be successful or not. It also can be really limiting. I went to graduate school here in the Bay Area, and I was the only Black person in my class, and nobody spoke to me for the first year because I was the only Black person in the class. And in graduate school, as you know, you work in groups, you do projects together. Nobody would work with me. So, every institution, actually, let me just say this, and I don't know if I told you this last time, but I did get kicked out of that school. Eventually, they would not give me the B in the MBA. I don't know if I mentioned that last time we were together, no. Because I was not going to participate in the absence of truth, which is a form of love, right? And so they were like, we don't want you to speak that truth, so we're going to let you go. And so we're in this world that is beautiful, but also complex.
Mhm.
And so if you are not clear about your self-worth and loving the experience of you, you are easily mismanaged
Mm.
by many, many institutions, many, many thoughts of belief, the dominant mind thinking all at the same time. And it's confusing and overwhelming. I believe, I'm saying this cautiously, I believe that that in part is is an influence on mental health issues.
Krishnamurti said it's not a sign of health to be well adjusted to a sick society.
Ooh, okay, that is good. I hope you put that up there on the website or on
Mhm.
Facebook.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wait,
absolutely.
say it again. It's not good to be.
It's not a sign of health to be well adjusted to a sick society. That's what I thought of as you were sharing that. So true.
Wow, that's good.
Mm.
So then I'm going to lean in on you two on this. I'm going to actually ask you guys a question. So then the question then becomes, where do we start? What does really self-love look like? If we can get past particularly like the, going to spas and, relaxing is great. Rest and relaxing are awesome. But going to spas and kind of the base, the top layer, what is the real soil, that fertilizes self-love? What do you guys see?
I love what you said about it rooting us. And it's so fascinating. I just ran across an article that really went into what if we took self-love to a deeper level, and it wasn't just about the spa days, but it was actually about understanding who you are and your deep, deep needs in life. And it was like, wow, I'd never looked at it through that lens before.
Yeah, and it's so perfect that you said that, because it really brings us back to this conversation around calling. So
Mhm.
when I think about calling, it can be a challenge to get to calling um, if pain, if trauma, if drama is still in the picture. And
Absolutely.
so I think the very first step and self-love is, number one, being honest about where those hurts are and getting the support that you need in order to begin to move from a place of wholeness. Because when I think about these kinds of things, I think about trauma, or I think about pain or hurt. What we're dealing with is misaligned energy, energy that has, because of whatever reason, gone in separate directions instead of a single direction of wholeness. So to the degree that we're able to do that, to recognize where those hurts and those pains are, begin that healing process, and then from there move into a place of calling, so you can do that calling fully and from the totality of one's heart, and from a place of love and altruism. Then now we're talking about service. A lot of times folks are they're making an effort to do that work, but their cup is half full because they haven't done this other work. And so they're
Yeah.
not operating from a place of the overflow, which leads to burnout.
Burnout and a constant inner fight around, am I this? Can I be this? Can I do this? Who am I? Who am I listening to? I think last time we were together, I might have spoken about the Vision Quest as part of my experience in the Indigenous world. And the beauty of the Vision Quest, and I'm going to tie it back to what you both were saying, is that there's nowhere to go. You're in a cave, or you're in a small piece of land. You're not walking anywhere. There's no journal for you to write in. There's no nothing. It's just you and the land and the elements. And the beauty of that is that in the solitariness of it, the just you of it, is that you are surrounded by the divine. and and you can hear it. It's in the birds, it's in the trees, it's in the dirt, it's in the air. And then you can hear your own divine self. And you could hear your divine self speaking to you about really who you are. And the reason I bring this up is that we don't have enough time. We don't make enough time to just be alone with ourselves and to be alone also in nature. And I talked last time about the busy badge, but when you can give yourself ample space and time, you'll remember your truth. You'll remember exactly who you are. Now, I'm not saying it won't frighten you. I'm not saying you're not going to toss and toil with it, because remembering doesn't mean you're going to absolutely agree to be that, because you still have the outside world that can have a major influence in you. And if you can give yourself enough space, and it's not going to be a day or an afternoon, although those could be good places to start. If you start with a day or afternoon, you might feel yourself wanting more. If you can give yourself ample time and space to really be with the capital S self, you will hear the song of beauty, truth, and love that's being live streamed to you, and you will hear who you are, and you will remember, and it'll excite you and maybe scare you a bit. But scaring you just means the other side of excitement.
Ooh, I got goosebumps. I was reading, I think it was yesterday, and reading the Course in Miracles, and there was this passage about the mind is connected to two parts of us. The first part, the mind is connected to the ego, where the illusions can be, and our limitations and all of our stories. And the other part is connected to our heart. And that's where the wisdom and the discernment and the truth of who we are exists. And what's fascinating to me is that the human experience, it is possible to go through life without that connection to the heart, without a full awareness of it.
That is so true, Laurel. I know that I have recognized that I have been engaging and actually attracted to what I call tough people, even though I know what toughness is versus strong. Do you understand? So there's a way for tough people. They're on target, they're moving, they're doers, they feel undistracted, they're not distracted by the world or by other people's thoughts. And that's very compelling for me, right? Like, how do you not get distracted? How do you not get your feelings hurt? Like, I just ignore it, is a typical response I've heard. And but what I've come up against every time I'm engaging with somebody who comes from this tough, and they're not bad people, it's just that was their response to life from early life. They had to toughen up. They were taught, or circumstances taught them, that was how they sustained themselves, right? That's how they got through it. But the problem with the toughness is that there's the vulnerability doesn't get the air, it doesn't get the breath. And if you don't give vulnerability breath, you can't breathe yourself into your own loving reality. And so there's a limitation. There's a stuckness to being tough, and so I think it gets qualified as strength, but really strong people are deeply vulnerable. So I don't know, that's my 10 cents on what you were saying. I don't know if I made a connection there or not. Make me look good.
I don't think we have to do that, Melanie.
Yeah,
like
okay, well,
that's already been done. I think the best we can do is just celebrate all that you are bringing to the table.
oh, thank you.
And and I really connect with what you're talking about, this whole idea of being tough versus being strong. It's interesting, you talk about vulnerability, and again, going back to your initial conversation. I mean, really, which is about having the courage to show up to be yourself, and to be oneself takes vulnerability, because it's interesting. I see this a lot with artists and musicians, and I'm thinking of one in particular, incredible musician, and this is a relatively new path for her. And there's this nervousness and anxiety about putting her work out, because she's putting her soul on display, and it's vulnerable
Really.
and it's uncomfortable. And it's only when that vulnerability meets the real world, that courage and that strength truly builds.
You know what I think we should do on it right now?
What's that?
It's a little scary. I don't even know. I'm going to say we, but I'm just going to have you guys do it, not me. I think it would be maybe helpful for those people who are watching this to maybe hear from each one of us about what revealing our path to self-love, revealing our path to vulnerability, and what that was like, and honest. Because it is, Michael, what you're saying about your friend, the musician, is true. It is frightening to, in the beginning, to put your soul out there, because they're like, will they love me? Sally Fields, you love me, you really, really love me. Will they love me? And people say, well, you have to love yourself first. I'm like, well, maybe, but sometimes getting love for other people will instigate the love of self. So you put your little soul out there through your art or your music or whatever, and if it's received, then that gives you courage. So I just wonder, would we be willing to share our own personal? Okay.
Yeah.
I'll go last, so then maybe we run out of time.
All right, Michael, you're up.
Yeah. So could you just do me a favor and just recreate that question once more, Melanie?
Yeah, sure. So how have you gotten to the place of being, loving yourself, showing up? What does that look like? And what were the obstacles? How did you navigate them? What kicked you in your gut, and what lifted you right up through your soul? How did you get there?
Yeah, that's a great lot of questions. I guess you could say for me, it's been a cumulative journey. And I will say, there have been many pivotal points along that journey. But the one I'd like to highlight in this moment is being married. And specifically what I'm talking about with that is it's very easy. It was very easy for me initially to place a lot of my concerns and my insecurities and my fears and the things that I wasn't doing at the feet of my spouse. And when I got clear that my life was based on my results, and that however she was being, it didn't matter, was actually in support of my growth, then that really made me dive deeper into what it looks like to love myself. Because if I'm loving myself, well, I'm going to do those things. And there's nothing that anybody in my family or anywhere else in the world can do to stop me from loving myself. And so I would definitely say that has been a big part of my journey, and surrendering to the wisdom of relationship.
Okay, but wait, I got to break in here, because I feel like there's like, here's the cream, but what was the curd? So like, when you're talking about your wife putting the issues at the feet of the spouse, what did that look like? What was the tussle? And how did you, what was your process for freeing yourself from the tussle? I mean, how did you get there? Like, what did you do? Who were you? What was your experience of it? We want the nitty gritty.
Yeah, look, I see what's going on here. I see what's going on here. Wow, okay. We're going there. We're talking about vulnerability. Let's get vulnerable. So,
Okay.
um, my parents divorced, and so going into marriage was a challenging thing for me because there was a great amount of fear around, oh, well, would I be married for a long time? Would I end in divorce? All these kinds of things. And so early in my marriage, I've been married for 15 years, I say for the first maybe 7 or 8, it was 1 foot in and 1 foot out. And I couldn't, I didn't own that initially. It was brought up to me by my wife, number one. And when I was able to take ownership of it, which was hard because that's not the kind of thing that I wanted to see about myself, you know?
Sure. Mhm.
But once I took ownership of it, that taking that ownership was probably like the first best step for me in that relationship. And how that was showing up in the relationship, a big part of how it was showing up for me was whenever I would feel like I hadn't made good on my dreams and my goals, it was her fault. It was, oh, well, if things were just, instead of like really taking that ownership, and not only taking the ownership, but seeing how perfect things were, how things were so perfectly positioned for me to build that strength that I would later need to move forward. And building that strength all had to come little by little through self-love, through reparenting, through nurturing myself. And I would say a big part of that is the shadow work.
Yeah.
A big part of it was the shadow work.
Can I ask about how you nurtured yourself? I promise that's the last thing. I promise.
Yeah, I would, how I nurtured myself. I would say it's different, and it was different in different times. Sometimes it was just silence. Sometimes it was journaling. Sometimes it was talking to friends. A big part of how I care and nurture for myself now is being in nature. And I would say another thing that I'm super excited about now is just this incredible cadre, if you will, of souls that have entered my life as a result of doing this work, that support me and that lift me up, and I get to do the same for them. So it's just this generative, nurturative type of experience that is sustaining itself. And from there, I've been able to move from survival to thrival, and it feels oh so good.
I just want to, underscore, circle the generative word you use. That's absolutely true and beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. That's me.
I'm looking at you.
Wow. So
I like this.
I don't know that I'm completely on the other side of this one. I do know years ago, I just kept, the more I tune into my heart, the more this calling just kept getting louder and louder. And I was sitting one day in contemplation. I thought, well, what if I just followed it? What would happen? I don't know. Worst thing that could happen is nothing, or somebody might get upset with me. So I really just that's when I decided to just cultivate that, this yes spirit of, where am I feeling shut down or scared? And where's the yes? What can I say yes to? And what if it just became like a discovery? Well, let's see what happens. I'll take one more step. Let's see what happens. Okay, now I'll take another step. And somehow the path just appeared step by step, but I could never see it fully in the distance. And I'd say that's still happening now. But I would say the part of me that doesn't feel like I'm on the other side of this is actually, Melanie, the work that I did with you is on finding my strength. My toughness maybe was the shy kid in the corner that wouldn't talk to anybody.
Mhm.
And I just had this wall of shyness up. But stepping into sharing from the heart, and really, yeah, there's just so much there. But
Were you ever afraid as you started and when you looked into your heart, and like, was there fear there too?
oh yeah, because I never really wasn't like imposter syndrome, but it was more like, I don't know if I'm the person to do this. Everyone else might be, but who am I to do this and say yes to this calling? That just, I'm not a this, I'm not a that, I'm not a, and so that self-doubt came in. And so what came through in the work that I did with you was that rooted truth that just wanted to just shout to the world this message that I had to follow your calling. And yeah, I still remember that poem that came through. It was just so powerful. And what was fascinating to me is watching myself cower, because I had the poem, it came through strong and clear, and I cowered at putting it on my website.
Raise your hand if you've ever cowered and asked yourself, who am I? Raise your, let me see how many, I only have 2 hands, but so I underline that too, because when you are learning to love and self-accept, of course you're going to doubt yourself. I mean, maybe not in the beginning. For some, it will be the beginning. Maybe it'll be in the middle. Maybe it'll begin the middle and the continuing. I don't know. But of course, anything that is that rich in our world, which wants us to doubt, the doubt's going to creep in, and then you have to tune in to your heart and really ask yourself, do I want this even though I am afraid? There's a line in Sue Monk Kidd's book. Oh my God, I can't remember the name of it. Of course, I know the name of The Book of Longings, I think it's called. The Book of Longings. And the character that in the book is actually the wife of Jesus Christ. And she has this clay bowl that she keeps. She's a writer, and women weren't allowed to write in this time. I mean, this is an assumption that Jesus was married, right? But and so women weren't allowed to write, and so she was a writer, and she had this papyrus, the paper, and she had this bowl that she kept the papers in, and the ink, and she took them out and she wrote inside the bowl, and I'm not going to get this exactly right, but it's something like something like God help me to be who I am even though I fear my greatness. I'm not saying that exactly. I'll find the quote and I'll put it there. But I thought, even though I fear my greatness, it's like, that's the thing. We will fear our greatness. We'll be excited about it. We'll be compelled about it. We'll also be afraid. But then, so my question for you, Laurel, is when you were having those moments of fearing your greatness, what did you cling to? that pulled you out of, the well of darkness?
The naming work that I did with you.
Oh, okay. I didn't mean to set that up, y'all.
No, but that's true. Like I go back to that name because it brings me back to my truth and the essence of why I'm here and my mission in life. And it brings me peace.
Mm, I'm grateful for that.
Mm.
I would agree. And when my elders name me, I forget about the name sometimes because we don't really, use it in public, although you see it here on the screen. When I go back to its meaning, it is helpful.
Yeah. And I know I asked you permission if I could share because it was so last time.
Yeah.
So the name that came through in the work that I did with Melanie was She Who Roots Us. And that I was like, that's what I can help people with in life. And that's what I help myself. That's that highest self can help me with as I walk through life in those moments that I feel like a little leaf that dancing in the wind. Yeah.
I'm looking at time. Can you guys get more time if you want?
All right, your turn. You're up.
Oh, okay. So, I think people who know me either personally or on social media have a perception that I'm courageous and brave. And mostly it's because I'll speak up to things that aren't right. And that's it. I just want you to know, for me, it doesn't feel like courage. That's not my experience. I don't know what courage really feels like, but what it does feel like when I'm speaking up is, I have to. It's a compelling force. This has to be said. This has to be stopped. This has to start. And I'm compelled by something inside me. It's not at all like I'm fierce and courageous. In my work and in my life and in the iterations of my work, I have always been deeply, deeply afraid, deeply, deeply scared. Um, when I started coaching was, like, I think I might have mentioned this, I don't remember. But coaching was, not brand new, but it was the 90s and it was kind of new. And, talking about it and educating people on what it is. I mean, people know now, but back then they didn't. And there was a lot of scorn around it and the touchy feeliness of it. And when you're a coach, you're out on your own. You can go to the school, you can get the coaching, certificates and all that, but eventually you just got to go out on your own. And I mean, that was deeply frightening. Like, who am I? Like the questions you asked, how will they respond? How do I, it was like, you're making it all up. And that's true of all of us, no matter what we're doing, whether we're self-employed or employed by another business or whatever we do, we're making it up. Right. And so, I don't know that I'm not, I'm not ever not afraid, to be honest. And I think, like Michael, the things that you did, I do, the time in nature is huge. And when I can't be in nature or in addition to it, friends are very helpful. Dark chocolate has been helpful, maybe a bit too much. But friends, sometimes reading, I'll read Richard Rohr, who is a mystic, who is alive, and he's beautiful, or Saint Teresa of Avila. Again, I'm going to misquote. I'm not good at quotes like you are, Laura. I'm totally impressed by you, by the way. But she has a poem in one of her writings that talks about, I'm gonna misquote it, but there are no walls, no borders, no boundaries between me and the divine. And when I read that, it just melts me. Like, if there are no borders, if there are no walls, then the question is, who am I? The statement then becomes, who am I not? Who am I not to allow the divine to direct me and for me to answer that direction? It almost brings me to tears. And that place of loving oneself enough to answer the call doesn't look like, oh, I just love myself. You know, and I mean, for those who do feel that way, awesome. For me, it's not, oh, I just love who I am. You know, it's more like I'm compelled. I'm compelled by the divine seeing and making me available to do this work. And I do love myself. I do, but I love this universe more. And I'm compelled to give this multiverse, this universe, this land, this earth, the people, I'm compelled to give them every inch of myself, not out of bravery. Oh my God, see, I'm going to cry. Not out of bravery, but out of the love that the world and the divine and my friends and earth and nature have shown me. And it's never easy, and it's never exactly hard, but it is always challenging, and it is always good.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's so rich. You know, as I was listening to you talk about the generosity that you're sharing with others and the earth, I couldn't help but think that that we are nature, we are earth, we are divine, and there is no separation. And to the degree that we start to separate ourselves from that reality, that's where we experience dis-ease, discomfort, destruction.
Yeah.
More fear.
Yeah.
More judgment.
Yeah.
Less truth.
Yes.
Absolutely. It's beautiful, Michael.
Mm.
When we can surrender ourselves to the voices, to the calling, to whatever you want to call it, when you can surrender, and the surrender is really our ego, which is the doubting, which is the wanting to keep us safe, which is the needing to know how do I do this? You know, it's like then all of that. When we can surrender, when I have surrendered to, and this, I mean, I'm speaking like this week, having to go through this again and again, it's like it never ends kind of thing. And I'm like, okay, I surrender. I'm not going to fight it anymore. So, and this is the conversation I literally have on my sofa with God, Creator, the Divine Mother, whatever the words are for you. It's like, okay, I'm not going to fight it anymore. But you literally have to download it in me, because I can't hear it, and I see glimpses, and I need to have the whole picture. It doesn't mean I have the answers of how. I just need to know, I need to see the picture, and you got to download it. And then I just sit there and be quiet, or I go for a walk and I just listen. And that's the most self-loving I can give myself in the moments of deep, deep fear, is surrender.
Yeah, you know, I love that so much. And as you were sharing that, you were talking about the ego, it reminds me of a phrase that a friend of mine uses. He says, our ego is who we think we are based on what we think we know about ourselves.
Wow. I hadn't heard that before. I like that. Based on what we think we know about ourselves.
Right. And what's so interesting about all of that, who we think we are is based on, more often than not, somebody else's thought about who they think we are. And what we think we know about ourselves is the same way. And so that begs the question, do you really know who you are? And if so, who are you? And that takes us back to what you were talking about earlier, which is this connection with the whole of life, nature, divine, spirit, essence. It's all one. And just sitting in that, whether it's through these different practices that we've talked about, and there's so many others. I mean,
Yeah.
we could go on about all the different practices that over, the last, several thousands of years, humans have managed to uncover to see themselves and to be themselves.
Mhm.
But as we step into these practices and we're able to honor the truth, to honor the calling that's there, um, not only do we benefit, but the whole of life benefits.
Mhm.
Right, absolutely. I was going to
Yeah.
respond to two things you said. Uh, I can't, maybe it's not important because now I can't remember them. So I'm not going to respond. They'll either come up or not. Oh,
Maybe
I
it's
know I have one thing to say, if that's okay.
Mhm.
It's so this thing about love and self-love and knowing who we are, I feel like it has been, and maybe it's shifting. Most you two might know better than I do because you're out there more in the corporate world than I am. I think it deeply scares and undermines in some way the corporate world. And my hope is that businesses are going to be more attracted to love now that, especially that coaching's been out in the world for a few decades, that the woo factor, the touchy feely, gets has been made wrong
Mhm.
by the business world on the whole. Not all businesses, of course, but on the whole. Because if we get touchy feely, if we get in touch with what we feel and what is being known to us, coming to us, then we may not want to be part of the cog. Now, I actually don't. Michael's got a few thoughts about that. I don't think that corporations are going away, and I certainly don't think that they need to. I just think they need to evolve to include love, because when love doesn't happen in our workplace, a lot of things do happen instead. Um, you know, not to mention what it does to people's bodies and the exhaustion. I mean, I think the way it used to be a few years ago, I don't know if this data is still true, is that most men have die on Mondays at 9 a.m. Um, it's particularly when they're not going to work, but they typically die at Monday at 9 a.m. and usually of a heart attack, because the exhaust of actually being a part of something and then not. So I want businesses to be open to a state of, and I'm going to use a religious language outside the context of religion, um, uh, to say, to be willing to advance themselves into a state of holy communion. And
Mm.
I'm not talking religion. I actually did a whole talk at years ago at the ICF at their conference, taking religious words out of the context of religion and using them in everyday conversation.
Mhm.
So when I say holy communion, I'm not related to religion. But I am related to Creator.
Mhm.
The other thing is, and that, Michael, everything you were saying is why I started doing naming, why I started doing soul naming, because I knew if people I could see them. I am intuitive, like we all are. I could hear and see who they are. And if they could hear and see who they are and have the language in which to represent themselves accurately, that they would have some rooting from which to grow. And that's all I wanted for people who got named, is to know that they could be rooted in themselves and that the fear wouldn't rip their roots away and leave them dying, So anyway, you put something in here. What did you say here, Michael? You said the call is taking a life of its own, and I love it.
That was in the chat for those tuning in.
That was beautiful. That's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah.
I
Wow. I
love it.
almost see this part 3 coming up, because now I'm just thinking about how there's also a fear of love.
Totally.
And that is, yep, that's a whole conversation.
That is,
Yeah.
yeah, there is a deep fear of it because it makes us vulnerable,
Mhm.
and, we can be harmed. We
Mhm.
can be harmed. We can come loving, and people will, and situations and institutions and people will mash it, but that's no reason to run from it.
Right. Right. yeah, there's so much there, so much freedom and just,
Ooh.
yeah. Yeah. So before we wrap up today, can you share a little bit more about the ceremony work that you are doing?
Oh, thank you for asking. So I do ceremonial work. I've been authorized by my elder to do indigenous-based ceremonies. And what indigenous-based means is that I don't copy any of the actual indigenous traditions I've been a part of. But based means that they always happen in nature for all the reasons we spoke of today. So I create individual ceremonies for people who are on the threshold of a deep evolution. That evolution could be what I might, call like the starting of the tears. Maybe something has ended, a relationship, there's been a death, or they're ending their corporate life and they're moving into something more art-based. Um, it could be, it's really any, so a lot of times I'll do namings. I'll do namings in ceremonial work where people bring their chosen family to witness them and be part of the ceremonies. As particularly elders, I'll do that for. So there's all kinds of ways ceremonies can be customized, but what makes them unique is that ceremonies are created in the hoop. They're like they're circle. So we circle up, and in the circle there is a sacredness. And I talked about community before. There's a sacredness of communion that happens because your chosen people have been invited not only to witness you and to be a part of this ceremony, to witness you in the ceremony, but they take an active role. So each person is assigned a role during the ceremony, and as the person has been ceremonialized leaves. So when the ceremony looks complete, it's not. Each person has a role to support you on your path of becoming. So it's not just a one and done.
Wow. That sounds so powerful. I just, imagining how this is something that we are lacking in our culture.
Yeah, we do a lot of cool rituals. We do a lot of celebrations. But, our chief at the time, Joe Chasing Horse, when I was a sun dancer, said, we need to take these ceremonies to the people. We need to take what we're experiencing, this place that we're experiencing, we need to take it to the people. And so this is my way of taking a practice of belonging, becoming, and loving, and evolving into the world in a very honest and dramatic and sustaining way. And I'm new to it in a sense. I've done a few of them, but I really want to do them in businesses and nonprofits. Specifically when there's change happening. I've done a lot of corporate and business retreats, but it's not that. I want to move beyond retreats, which the word in itself says something, into belonging and what it really is to be in the sacred of change within the business and act in an act of ceremony, what that looks like. It's a little convoluted to talk about because I haven't actually done it with businesses yet, but I have a vision for it.
I love it. And then somebody wants to find out more. What's the best way for them to connect with you?
The best way is, definitely Instagram, Facebook, and you can always just reach out at me at courage@melaniedewberry.com. I'm very responsive. So if you reach out, I'll reach back.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. What an honor to be with both of you today. I'm so happy that we did this part 2 because there was so much that wanted to come forward.
Me too. Thanks for having me again.
Yeah. Well, thank you to our listeners today. Thank you for joining us. We hope that these messages are a lantern to your path as you expand your success as a coach, leader, or helping professional. You can join the conversation further at integrativeintelligence.global. Bye for now.
Bye.